the ownership society, right? Like, because, property is the most important thing in the world. Even if you like crack somebody's back open, right? Like, that's the value of it. But
where do we put value?
Where do we put value? Yeah.
Wow.
Is it time for a little commercial break?
I knew this was going to be. I knew this was going to be
Let's
a
take
dope
a commercial
episode.
break.
It's so, it's
we'll
flowing
be right
nicely.
Back. Hello.
We're back.
We're back. I've never heard that song. I'm sorry, Akon. The people had to tell me who you were and why you sing that song.
Come on.
It's true. I'm old. What the fuck? Anyway, welcome back to Unapologetic,
a Black Love Manifesto. I'm Eb.
And I'm Jay.
And we're doing
That's Marlon.
This Marlon.
Marlon is our special guest today, talking to us all about mass incarceration, and how to upend that system.
Yeah. Before we left the break, we were getting into how policing is happening in communities or whatnot.
Yeah. So I was actually going to ask you. So we talk about mass incarceration. Everybody or many people know like 2.5 million people locked up, right? That doesn't actually count the people on parole, probation, the people awaiting immigration detention, the people awaiting their case. But even with that, we tend to think of mass incarceration as just being about being locked up. Like, what else is it about? Because it's clearly not just about that.
I always summon in Eddie Ellis, who
Eddie Ellis,
who passed away a couple of years ago. Did 25 years, falsely convicted.
What was the name of his radio show? On Account.
On Account. It's still on, actually.
Is it still on? Oh, that's awesome.
And he, years ago, back in the early 90s, him and a group of guys inside put together this whole thing called a non-traditional approach to social and criminal justice. And a couple of things that came out of it, but one of the things that is a quote that always stood out to me, and it's that there are no prison problems, there are only community problems.
Right.
And in that, it's not saying there are issues specific to jail and prison. Obviously, we see Khalif Browder, but that what's happening in prisons are just like a microcosm of what's happening in the community. So we can't really fix what's happening with the issue of jail and mass incarceration without really looking at what's happening in our community. So when you look at communities that have been plagued by whether it be enhanced law enforcement, whether it be, and these are for generations, right?
Generations.
Talking about, and then the onset of mass incarceration that started in like the late 70s, but really boomed in the late 80s, early 90s.
Right.
Whether folks are coming home in mass now, whether because of reduced sentencing, Rockefeller drug laws, etc., like the community has still been affected by that stain, by that trauma associated with prison.
Right.
We're talking about families, and one person goes to prison. For instance, myself, I'm connected to parents. I have my nephew, my sister, brother, friends.
Everybody's there with you.
Everybody's there with me, and they're now exposed to the brutality of that system.
Right.
And it's sort of like, people bring that back home with them. I'm talking about after you visit somebody, they bring that back home with them. I'm not even talking about the person who's released.
The trauma of it.
And so you look at communities, whether it be in parts of New York City, or where part of that study that Eddie Ellis came with was that about 75% of people in upstate prisons come from 7 neighborhoods in New York City, and South Bronx, Harlem, Brownsville, Eastern York, etc., South Jamaica. But whether it be here, you go to parts of Chicago, you go parts of New Orleans, DC, Baltimore, LA, Mississippi. You go to all these spots where there's dense, huge amount of our people have been incarcerated. You have to look at what has that done to the communities that they're from, economically, socially, and in terms of educationally, what that has done and doing to these communities.
Right.
But also, like, we don't think about the psychological effects of this.
Yeah.
So folks, I knew how to bid. And I'm thankful that I was able to, I come home and I've had a network of family members that have been able to help me out. Right. But the majority of people don't.
Have that support or foundation to go back to.
Right.
Yeah.
And so they not necessarily, some folks take longer than others to let go of the normality of bidding.
Right.
Yeah.
You don't let that go automatically.
Right.
That's when you hear they've been institutionalized, or you hear that type of.
Well, and in reading again one more time about Khalif Browder's story, when he talks about when he came out in one of these articles, like he was in solitary for like 800 days, right? He was
majority of his sentence.
The majority of his time at Rikers, which is most people on Rikers are awaiting the outcome of their case. They haven't been convicted of anything.
I was there almost 3 years.
Right.
You were there almost 3 years, just awaiting the outcome of the case, right? And so he was like, he was saying in the article, he would be pacing back and forth and like be constantly paranoid. And if you don't have, and he was, he had a support system, he had counseling, whatever. Yeah. But like, you know, if you were also, he was a kid when he went in there,
16.
right? And like solitary confinement changes your brain,
right?
But then when your brain is still developing,
right,
the impacts are immense, as we see in his
well,
case,
well,
right?
he killed himself, but,
Yeah.
He did.
but his mother died.
Right
A
after.
heartbreak,
Yes.
literally
Right after
like
that.
a
Right after.
like a I want to say maybe less than a year.
Less than a year.
She died of heartbreak.
Yeah.
So that's like a real life example of what incarceration can do to communities. It literally affected it affected him. Obviously, he took his own life,
And all of his siblings.
and all of his siblings.
Yeah.
You know, and
Right.
you know, when you hear siblings speak, and I've heard siblings speak in person, and they're so living with the trauma of him and his mother now.
Yes.
Right.
Of him and
Right.
his mother, and that's just one person.
Yeah.
Right, but
Yeah.
there are 2.134.5 million people in this country who are in prison, and then we have people who are in immigration detention, and about 7 million people who are on some sort of like correctional supervision,
Some
whether
kind
it
of
be
control.
parole, probation, ankle bracelet, whatever it is. You know, so we literally live in an incarceration state, an incarceration
Right.
nation, and I don't think we've really, maybe we may not even see in our lifetime, but the far-reaching effects what this has had. Think about slavery and how that has
Right.
had far-reaching effects
Right.
generations later.
Right.
We now in this system of mass incarceration, and this era of it, mass criminalization, and we haven't really been able to see what this creates, not only for America, but as we're, you know, as deportations are a larger part of it, or mass deportations are part of it. This is now international
Right.
pandemic. It's a sickness.
Right.
And we don't see how this is literally affecting our globe.
Right. And the other thing I'm thinking too is so many times, like, you know, people think like, so in terms of the numbers of people who are locked up or under some kind of correctional control, it's a lot of people. So it's touching a lot of our lives anyway, right?
matter what.
No matter what. But there's still this mythology about, like, you know, everybody thinks what happens on that TV show Law and Order or CSI or some
Right.
shit. Like, they think that is what these systems are about, right? So like if you had to tell people like, well, actually these are like the top 3, top 2, whatever myths that I want to bust about the criminal justice system, jails, prisons, courts, whatever, like what do you, I mean, besides the fact that most people take pleas, we don't go to trial.
Okay.
Right. Like,
Right.
Over 90% of people are going to take a plea, not because they're guilty,
It's set up that way.
because it's a plea-based system. But like,
Right.
what else do you want to say to people about what they need to know about the systems?
Well, jails inherently cannot rehabilitate.
Right.
Inherently, they cannot. They're not structured that way. I just came from spending a week. Every couple of months, I do a week-long seminar in a federal prison in Virginia. So I just actually came back from there Friday. And without going into details of it, but that same dynamic is that jails and prisons cannot do that. When security is boss, it can never like really help folks to get to where they need to be. Folks do it despite jail, despite prison.
Right.
I always put that in, not because of.
Right.
So that's like one myth I like to debunk. The other one is that folks who are in jail and who have been released from jails and prisons are somehow inherently different from
Right,
everybody else. I think that's something I had to sort of like, I came to learn when I was inside, because I had my preconceived notions of, you know, particularly like prison, maybe jail. I might have had like I know a lot of people that went to jail, but you know, when you do a lot of time, you think, you know, this person must have did that, and they're this type
Right.
of person, they're
Right.
incorrigible, etc.
Right.
And you realize, well, one, I know what I am. Right, I know what I am, right? But I also know what a lot of people around me were,
Yeah.
and these
Right.
folks cared, and they like loved, and they
Right.
were like silly, and they like romantic comedies and
Right.
all that sort
They're
of stuff.
people.
I was
They're
gonna say they're
people.
human beings.
Yeah.
Right, and they were like
Yeah.
atheists and Jehovah's Witnesses and Catholics, and I mean, people would, the argument with somebody may say, the cynic would say, well, they went to prison and learned that. So we all go through different experiences in our lives that cause us to like evolve.
Right.
Some people lose a family member, some people get a new job, some
Right.
people, whatever it is. It just so happened to be the thing for that person.
Right.
You should just be happy that they got to that place.
Right. Yeah. And you know, the whole idea that the criminal justice system, you know, I don't know who, I'm totally stealing somebody's idea right now, but maybe you said it actually. It's like, you know, if we sort of put people over here, we think that they're somehow so different, or we don't have to really deal with who they are or the brokenness of our communities. So we can sort of like turn a blind eye and be like, oh, well, that's Janice's problem. That's her community's problem.
Well, that's why we build a wall.
Yeah.
That's why they talk. I mean,
Right.
that's
Yeah.
American, right? That's
Right.
why so
Yeah.
many people believe in that. It's the Mexicans that are doing the drugs, and the Mexicans that are committing it's those folks.
Right.
As if we
And then
ain't
and
build
then
this country on.
and we don't do the drugs.
Right. And then
we
it's
don't do the drugs.
constantly perpetuated
Right.
throughout the media
The
and
biggest
whatnot.
consumer of
'Cause
drugs in the country.
Right. Because you even they talking about the different shows that they have on right now. One of the shows that I cannot stand right now. I'm firing shots, Jay. Me. But
I'm always the one firing shots.
I'm firing shots today. And I think the show is called Live PD or some whack ass shit like that. And supposedly the concept of the show is that they go around following live officers on duty while they go
like
and
cops.
Kind of like Cops.
Kind of
that's
like
right. Cops.
Cops.
The original reality show.
That is
Cops.
you know what? They're
Yeah.
doing a remix on it because on this one they have two guys in the studio commenting, a white guy and a black guy.
Diversity.
Okay. And you can tell the black guy
Jesus.
is normally crunchy. I think they changed out the original black guy because
God.
the original, he made a comment the other day that they were harassing somebody in the street, and I do say harass, and they were harassing somebody in the street, and so when they came back to the studio to talk about it, the black guy says, "Oh yeah, I think that's the first people that we've ever arrested with bow ties on." Exactly.
What?
Exactly. Get your job together. Okay.
Jesus.
But there's an appetite for that sort of.
Oh,
like
it
folks
burns
are
me so
watching
much.
Folks are
It burns me.
advertising for
They
it.
only go to one type of neighborhood. I mean, and then again, I can't even lie because if you go to the hoity-toity neighborhoods, you're not even going to find any kind of patrolling whatsoever. They're
Right.
not even
Yeah.
out there.
But you will find the drugs and all that.
You
look
will
for.
find the stuff,
Sure,
but
for sure,
yeah, you
for
don't
sure.
find no patrolling out there.
Right,
So,
yeah, well, 'cause
it just burns me.
they
That
have
show
a different
burns my ass.
set of rules, right? Like,
Yeah.
because, well, yeah, I can talk a blue streak about it, but, so we're okay here. So, you interviewed, Glenn Martin on your podcast. What's the name of your podcast, Marlon?
Decarcerated. Check it out everywhere.
Nice.
Doing my Diddy thing. Check it.
Check that.
So Glenn Martin and others were involved in the campaign to close down Rikers Island because, I mean, in the last few years, although literally for decades, right, people who've been inside Rikers have been like sounding the alarm on like how fucked up things are there.
Right.
And then Khalif
College story
Browder and
coming
then
up,
like a bunch of other things, right? So
And what was the goal? To shut it down by 2030?
Well,
So the mayor came out. My colleagues
Sorry.
called me into the break room and were like, "Oh my God, watch this!"
Yes.
Right. The mayor said he's going to close down Rikers.
Yes, de Blasio.
In 20 years or some shit
10
like 10 years.
10
I was
years.
like, that's not a fucking story, but maybe it is. What do you think about that? What do you think about the effort to do that and to close down jails generally, right? Because sometimes I think if it closes here, it's going to pop back up over here.
Somewhere.
Right?
Yeah.
So then what are we pushing for, really?
Well, I definitely believe that. So, I know Glenn personally, and
Yeah.
I appreciate the imagination.
Yeah.
That's dope. That folks, so we can do amazing
Yeah.
things, particularly when we hone our imagination. So the imagination that this place is that we've always known to exist.
Right.
Somebody said, well, let's think about shutting it down, and that's dope, and I appreciate that, and I applaud it, and I support it.
Yeah.
But I also see the closing Rikers Island as a proxy for what we can do around this country. So we can be, if folks can get together and say, well, we can literally reduce the population on this place to close it.
Right.
Well, if we can do that here on this as a model, or we can do that in Manhattan House. We can go to Attica. We can go to Green. We can go to San Quentin. We can go to Angola. Like the thing is that we can literally, we overuse incarceration, and that's one of the things that this shows us.
Yeah.
That
Right.
we overuse prisons. That's the first thing. The second thing is that we overuse them. We can think about closing them and abolishing them. So do I believe as somebody who like prison abolition? Yeah, without a doubt.
Right.
I have to believe that we can be held to our highest, and I have to believe in our people, like in ability for us to sort of like to reach our highest level, highest potentials, and to be
Right.
able to take care of ourselves and each other. If we're not working towards seeing the highest in ourselves, then what's the sense in working? You dig what I'm saying? So I'm not going to be the person to be like, we need to be always thinking about the next jail and next prison. First of all, that's not my job.
Yeah.
They let other folks do that, right? My job, and if you're a politician, that's your job to compromise and do all that sort of stuff. My job is to push you in the other direction, to push you further. So yeah, without question, I think that Rikers Island, the closing of it is a noble effort, and it's dope that it's happening. It needs to happen quicker than 10 years.
Right.
But I also see it as an opportunity to think creatively about how to build communities. There's a great deal of money and resources has been put into that place, and if we think that the only way we only think that we close it, so we just redistribute the resources and money to the other jails. That's a problem. We haven't really realized how we haven't really reimagined well enough.
Yeah. If you ever go to Rikers, have you ever been on Rikers Island?
No.
It's
Have you been to LaGuardia Airport?
Then you've been to Rikers, it's like, well, it's also it's literally
it's in Queens, right?
Yeah.
Queens, yeah,
Astoria, kind of
off there.
I don't know. I just
I just been there. I don't know how to get there. I was just there. Yeah, well, it's an island, right?
It's literally an island.
I think I saw a movie like somebody trying to swim away from it.
Good luck with that,
right?
But God bless you if you can swim away from that place. but it's an industry, right? They've got their own zip codes. I mean, like it's a little town basically, right? It's its own city. So for me, when you drive around there, if you drive around the campus or the island, you just realize like, oh, look at all the resources that are being invested here. Just for this place.
I see your
just
point.
For this fucking place. So then I start to think about like,
what
are those people who, it's an economy. So what are the people who are investing there going to do when that shit closes down? And I think in a lot of ways they will be the biggest barrier, right? Because they are investing a lot of resources to make sure that shit keeps churning.
It's always about money.
That's
what it's about.
That's
Always
what it's
about
about.
money.
I was watching something today that was upsetting. I think it was on the news because and it might have been related to Rikers, where apparently they were operating like a cemetery or something like that, and they have, of course they're getting like free labor. I think they're paying the inmates like 50 cents to like dig graves or do whatever they're doing, something ridiculous. And then they're not honoring the bodies. The families don't know that the inmates have died, and like all of this crazy stuff. And then they're like 100 people buried on top of each other, like something crazy, right? So
it's like a mass grave.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. But that's just like one of the things that that happens. Like,
well, yeah, it's money at all costs,
right?
At any cost, yeah.
And it's invisibilizing people. Which is one of why I just like correction. So like we try not to use like language is important.
What did I say?
Right. So we don't
inmate,
right?
Yeah.
So like inmate, ex-con, all that. We understand there's a real definition for it, but we're in a space of understanding that people are people. So people are incarcerated. People happen to not be incarcerated or what have you.
People with criminal convictions.
People convictions and all that. So
Thank
it is that's
Educate
not only for
me.
you, but that's for the people, the millions of people.
Everybody.
I always say
That's for
some
all
dumb
of
shit.
us.
Thank you.
That's that's for all of us. So,
When we first started out the whole unapologetic stuff, it was so funny because I think it came up. I was like, "Oh, Jay, I'm turning over my coon card." Yes.
Yeah,
it's what it is.
Jesus.
Learning.
And coconuts and all that. Right. We going everywhere. Unapologetic. All right.
That's what it is.
That's a manifesto.
All right.
Unapologetic.
Learn me up. Learn me up in the way I shall go.
I have a question for you.
Yes.
I'm asking all of the questions today.
Hey, you the smart one.
Yes.
Let's go.
No. So incarceration has been bad for a really long time, right? It's sort of, this goes back to slavery and whatever. Are things different now because of Trump?
Or what? In what way?
Yeah, well, you tell me. Are they different? Because I also feel like people who've been locked up have been locked up. Families have been dealing with that in Black and brown communities for decades, right? So for us, it's been hell for a really long time.
Well,
so does this change the game? Like him being there, does that change? Particularly when I think about the Justice Department, right?
Well, I think what he has done, and we see he's activated a lot more people out there, and activated. And that's a good thing.
To resist.
Yeah. That's you even got Hillary talking about. I resist now. Hillary.
Stop talking.
So
she's trying to get him out of there. She's trying to. Yeah.
That's what she's trying to do.
Anyway,
She always trying.
She is trying it.
She got E for effort though. She don't stop.
Sure.
But what it does, I think, it tells one is that folks like to say it, but we need to this is using the media terminology, but we need to double down. I don't think there's a moment where because Sessions is in office, that we're supposed to say, well, the fight is too big for us to be up. I think there's even more reasons to be even stronger in the advocacy and activism against it, but to also be even more keenly aware of the things that's happening undercurrent. So as we're, Trump is always finding ways to distract folks, whether it be through tweets and all this, saying something is fake news, and everybody runs there to find out what's happening there.
Right. Or disprove it. Yeah.
Various executive orders are being passed that we're not hearing about. Jeff Sessions himself is pushing for certain things, policies that are affecting folks on an everyday basis that we don't even, kind of like get pushed under the rug. Or even on a state level, where as we talk about Khalif Browder, which folks don't know, but it speaks to his journey and what like Khalif Browder was blood at one point. Right, folks don't think about it. So, and people who had we led with, or the media led with, he was blood, then we would sort of have like no empathy.
Right. But he's still a human.
He's still a human being.
Yeah.
He's still a human being. But
I don't give a fuck what he did.
I don't care what he did. We all are, right? But even above that, just yesterday, Senate passed legislation. The state Senate here in New York passed legislation for stiffer penalties for people who are in gangs, who recruit people for gangs, all that sort of stuff.
But also, that's a broad brush, right? Because you can get scooped up into those categories real fucking easy.
But it happened as a result. One of the folks, what's happening in Long Island with MS-13. So folks says, "Oh, we need this. We need this," and I get folks upset and hurt. Right, but what I'm also saying that we came here we've done that before. We've done that in the '90s with Clinton and in violent crime,
and we see the results.
We see the results.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is that because, like, most folks don't know about that piece of legislation that was passed, because we're paying attention to what's on the top, what they're able to distract us with.
Right.
So I think in this particular area, we need to be much more. We need to be reading the footnotes. Mm-hmm. We need to be reading like on the commercials when they're like, we need to like slow that down and listen to that, because that's actually how they're pushing some of them. The things that were literally impact us for years on by, they're passing through by distracting us with some of these things that are empty.
Yeah,
talking about things that we're not seeing or distractions or what have you. Like, a lot of times the conversation around mass incarceration is geared towards the men. So I know earlier you were talking about you working with the intersectionalities of different things. So like, how do we hear about the stories of women or transgender or different people, communities of people that are being impacted? And
no
whatnot.
question. I mean, on the podcast, Decarcerated, you got Donna Hilton, Vivian Nixon, Renata. But yes, I mean, women are, particularly African American women, are the fastest growing segment of the prison population.
I wonder why.
And men, predominantly is a male dominated space, which sadly many spaces are able to sometimes obfuscate like the fact that we are dismissing a whole segment of the population who are also impacted by jails, prisons, violence, etc. And that only sort of like helps put more people into these spaces when we're not we're not paying attention to the journeys, the issues that women have, that they're dealing with, that are just like ours, but obviously they're nuanced, etc. But I mean, that's one of the biggest things I think. And there's women out there that's phenomenal in making sure that we shut up, right, and making sure that that they are authentically speaking to what their experiences are, whether it be the folks, Donna Hilton, etc., Andrea James. Like, there are women out there doing that work, and and I'm thankful for that, because it better informs the work that I do.
That's really interesting that you said African American women are one of the leading populations that are starting to be affected by this, because on the flip side, African American women are supposed to be one of the leading populations in
we have most educated or something, like we've got the highest like advanced degrees or something like that,
like supposedly,
but still underpaid, so fuck you, pay me.
So that's really really interesting though, that like here it is, we're like getting to this level over here, and so then it's like, is that like a slap, like, oh no, we got to take them down?
Well, it's something that we're not paying attention to. It's one of those things that sort of like it's sliding under the radar. And literally, when you have, listen, I don't care what movie, what work, what era it was always women leading it. I don't care which era it was. From, if you watch Underground, you see Minty. That's she gave me all my life. Whether it be her or you coming forward now, there's always been women that has been leading these movements for our freedom. And so be thinking about it. Think about it. If we're having our women, I'm not saying our women, but women, going to these spaces of incarceration, being traumatized by it, you're taking away our leaders.
Yeah.
You're literally taking away our
Right,
leaders.
by design, right? Like I agree with. I think that you're both right. I do think that social control doesn't just happen for shits and giggles, right? It happens, right, to control our bodies, so that resources accrue to certain people in this society, and the bad shit that happens to us is just a consequence, right?
And then we get a movie made out of it 30 years later, and it wins the Oscar award, and then we're like, oh wow, that happened back then.
Right, right. 12 Years a Slave.
12 Years a Slave.
I was gonna say, or they
Hidden Figures.
bring out some other stuff about you and shut the whole movie down. Okay.
That
Anyway,
dude was whack.
Who you talking about, Nate?
Don't.
okay, I can't.
I got a whole.
I'm not even gonna go there. It's too controversial. I'm not even gonna go there.
Oh wow.
Marlon has a lot to say about that one.
I don't even know what to say. I don't know what I just did right now. Y'all know I'm
Lord.
trying to grow up, guys. Y'all know I don't know what to say.
Okay,
Anyway.
we'll have to do another podcast about that one. But so 2 questions. One is, who's doing that dope organizing right now that people can connect with?
Well, you named some of them.
You named some of them already.
Yeah.
But like, who can people go research and connect with if they want to learn more, but also get engaged on a deeper level than maybe they have engaged with?
So
right
just shout
now?
out to folks. So I mentioned
Yes.
some folks. Andrea James and Cole, Topeka Sam. They're doing a lot of work around the national. I always get it wrong, but the National Council for Currently Incarcerated and Formerly Incarcerated
Oh,
Women.
great! They're great.
Right.
They're great.
So and that's a national space.
Yeah.
And you're on the west side. I mean, some young people's also, but like Tia also. And
Oh
among
yes,
other folks.
Black Alliance for Just
No
Immigration.
question.
We love them.
No
we
question.
love
I
them.
heard that name.
You know
before.
Tia.
Yeah.
Tia's the shit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's also people's here, Carmen Perez, Dante Barry.
Yeah.
I mean, there's
Million Hoodies.
Million Hoodies. Yeah, no question.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's folks around the country. In Chicago, I'm gonna say their names because they're part of a large organization, but they're doing tremendous work and they're formerly incarcerated folks and do a lot of work around gun violence. 2 folks, Kobe Williams and Marcus. Marcus, you're gonna be mad at Marcus. You know what I'm talking. Marcus and Kobe. You say them together, you know they're in Chicago.
Disrespectful.
No question. But it's interesting.
What organization do they work with?
They work for Cure Violence.
Okay,
And the reason
Cure
why
Violence.
I'm saying them particularly because they're dudes who, from the space, streets, etc. And they've been doing a lot of work around gun violence and training other folks. But like they're in Trinidad, where I'm from, training organizations, community folks. Like they're training community folks, dudes in the hood, about how to sort of like, create the communities they want. That's, and really their spaces of violence in the hood. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I give them props for that because they go around the world doing that, and they just regular 2 dudes from Chicago.
Yeah.
And so once again, we always think about these spaces as blighted and nothing can come out of it.
Yeah.
And just be thinking about like these dudes are doing amazing work.
Yeah. And so the last question is,
Yes.
We got our cue. What
What?
does
Go ahead, Em.
unapologetically Black resistance to mass incarceration look like to you?
Say it again. That's a long one.
that's what that dude said last week.
That's a lot of syllables. And
Unapologetically Black resistance
There
to
you
mass
go.
incarceration. What does that look like?
A lot of syllables.
It's a lot of syllables.
it means not investing in police.
Yeah.
Not putting more resources there.
Disinvestment. Yeah.
It literally means that.
Yeah.
It literally means, and I'm saying starting on the outside before we even go into the jails and prisons.
Yeah.
It looks like investing in issues of the historical traumas of folks in our communities.
Yeah.
Right?
Healing.
It looks like healing. It says that. It also means connecting the historical traumas of folks in our communities to the diaspora. Right? Because
Black
it's all
folk
related.
everywhere, right,
Right? And then going into the jails, obviously, one is that for folks there, we need to, whether it be education programs for the folks in there, that is important while they're there for, while they're there now, invest in educational programs for the folks there, and not educational programs that get you a degree, but also some that don't necessarily give you a degree,
Right.
but they can't be run for efficacy purposes. They can't be run by the people inside. And obviously, I think we need to literally put prison abolition into our vocabulary, into our vocabulary, and giving context to it and explaining what that means. 'Cause people get pushed off by it.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, we're getting the cheer. Like means
Marlon.
we got to go.
We got more time?
Oh my gosh, this has been an
It's
amazing,
been a great conversation.
With the better
Yeah.
shooter?
I cannot. It has
Yes.
been an amazing conversation.
Yes. Thank you for
so
being
much
here.
for coming, for
Thank you.
educating us, enlightening us. Thank you so much.
And
for
listen to
having me.
Decarcerated podcast.
Yes.
Yes.
It's
Everywhere.
all of it. Peace,
And we'll
y'all.
post up where the people can find you, all
Yes.
that good stuff.
Do all that good. So live a good life, y'all.
Yeah. Peace.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Unapologetic, a Black Love Manifesto with your hosts, Eb and Jay. To keep up with the Shameless Duo, all their rants, insights, and unabashed guest interviews, please be sure to subscribe on SoundCloud or iTunes. And as always, they really love to hear from you. So please be sure to hit them up at ublm.weebly.com to share your questions, comments, or feedback. You can also follow them on FB, Twitter, and IG at UnapologeticBLM. Until next time, live life bold, free, and unapologetically. Peace. This has been a Black Lady production.